Okay, welcome back to the Snap. Again, we've had a great response from you guys. And Patrick, it's been great to see the support and the number of people subscribing now. So thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, the likes and subscriptions are rolling in, and again we're looking to report some of the upbeat stories about Britain that a lot of the mainstream media seems to miss for some strange reason as they obsess about various soap opera issues.
Yeah, and I think, a really positive development again, Patrick, in terms of economic forecast. This one from EY Item Club, upgrading its 2021 growth forecast from 5% to 6.8%, which would mark the fastest rate since official records began. Again, Patrick, it's quite the contrast, isn't it, to some of the doom and gloom that we were fed about Britain's prospects once we had left the European Union.
Yeah, and this is one of the biggest political stories of the year, which is getting hardly any coverage. People sat up and took notice when various forecasters, including the IMF, came out with upticks in their expected UK growth to just above 5%. But now there seems to be a new consensus saying that we could almost hit 7% this year and possibly next year as well. And that's totally unprecedented. And there's some more data as well. I think it's from Deloitte's reporting the biggest upsurge in consumer confidence for a decade as well. So we are seeing consensus now that the amount of so-called long-term scarring on the economy because of the COVID depression is going to be much less than people thought. Unemployment is now likely to peak at about 5.8% rather than 7 or 8%, probably towards the end of the autumn. And we're going to be in pretty good economic shape. And that must mean, at the very least, that the Brexit trade deal isn't dragging anything. You know, according to the Remainers, we shouldn't be able to achieve anything like these figures.
Yeah, and obviously, as you mentioned, this sort of positive stuff isn't getting anywhere near the coverage it should be. But of course, what we've seen from a lot of media outlets is this continued obsession that they have with Dominic Cummings. And Patrick, we saw at the weekend an opinion poll actually showing the Conservatives increased their lead over Labour to 11 points. And you written for the Telegraph, the piece, the public is far more concerned by the bigger picture than the court politics of number 10, which I think is absolutely right.
Yeah, the big picture, Labour is unelectable, which is a bit of a stumbling block when we come round to elections for a lot of people. The economy, as we've just been discussing, is in really good shape. And part of that is due to the strategy of Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson during those tense times a year or so ago. The vaccine rollout is superb. We're only about, this is quite somber, but we're only about 3 weeks away from Italy on current rates overtaking the number of total deaths in the UK, and they're already above us on deaths per million, as are a dozen other European countries. So the idea of us as one of the worst countries in Europe on COVID deaths is beginning to ebb away as well. So those are the fundamentals. Boris Johnson does think outside the box, act outside the box, and that's been crucial to a number of breakthroughs, including on vaccines. He said, she said, Carrie hates Dom, Carrie hates Lee, Lee hates Carrie, Henry, this guy Henry that hardly anyone's heard of as a cropped up friend of Carrie. It's, to be honest, it's soap opera stuff. And the breathless excitement with which it's being reported. And today we have, potentially a remark from a frustrated Prime Minister at the end of a meeting with Hancock and Gove. And it seems to me if he did say there won't be a third lockdown, even if the bodies pile up, he was trying to tell them, you're not going to Bigfoot and bounce me again. And despite nearly having been killed by COVID himself, it does show his reluctance just to trigger lockdowns. And in fact, obviously, he did end up triggering a third lockdown. So again, this is going to be an overheated row, which I think ordinary people from all walks of life, used to having occasional bust-ups in the workplace, before everyone makes up and pulls in the same direction, they're not going to think this is a resigning issue or this is an issue on which to switch their vote.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, Patrick, when you actually look at the data, ignore the sort of soap opera that some people are always desperate to whip up and actually drill into some of the research on this. And what you find is a pattern that's pretty consistent. Boris, when people are asked, would you prefer to have Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, Boris is consistently miles ahead. When you ask Conservative voters and Labour voters, are you happy with the Labour Party leader or the Conservative Party leader, to those voters who voted for that party at the last election, Boris Johnson's approval rating with Conservative voters was on about 88% in that opinion poll, compared to Labour voters, it's only 69% approving of Keir Starmer. So the evidence is out there. It seems increasingly that some want to just sort of disregard all of that and again just chase the sort of soap opera lines that we see. Although we must say, shortly before recording this episode, there was another poll that came out from Ipsos Mori that did show the Conservatives down 5 points, though they did still have a 3-point lead over Labour, who are down 1. Patrick, do you think the media's attempt to sort of whip up some of this soap opera hysteria will have an effect on polling day or not? Because personally, I don't see it.
I don't see it either. The only possible exception would be in a very close race. If Hartlepool by-election is a very close race, could it, just turn 500 or 1,000 people on polling day and see Labour maybe squeak home? Well, my sources up in Hartlepool think the Tories have got a handy lead now. So, that will be an important contest to see. Could it take some of the froth off the very top of the Tory performance short term? Possibly, but we've got another couple of weeks to go. We're seeing this good economic news every day. We're seeing good news on COVID every day. So I do think this is predominantly a London bubble story. And let's see the scores on the doors on May the 6th, and then we'll know which party's really in trouble.
Patrick, you were sort of you worked for the Daily Express for a long time. How can it be that you see this happen time and time again, where certain journalists seem to convince themselves this is what the country's talking about, and it's just patently not true? Why do they not understand that?
Well, I think a certain amount, not very much, but a certain amount of sympathy for some of the political journalists, the younger ones particularly. These are stories that involve people they know. They're people perhaps are obsessed with political process themselves, and it all seems very exciting. I mean, I remember the Peter Mandelson scandals in the late 90s, and Mandelson was right at the heart of the Blair project. I found it quite exciting, to be honest. And ironically, I remember Alistair Campbell, who was then the Prime Minister's press spokesman, poo-pooing the whole thing and saying, look, come the next election, people are going to vote on the issues they always voted on: schools, hospitals, law and order, jobs, living standards. And he was right, but oddly enough, he is now one of the person getting people most hot under the collar and overexcited about the cost of the sofa in the Downing Street flat, or this hot air, this trivia. That is not, as a year or so ago, it was Dominic Cummings driving to Durham was going to be the end of Boris Johnson and the end of the Tories. These squalls will come and go, but people outside politics just want delivery on the big issues that affect their lives.
And again, a landmark bit of research that I saw yesterday that got absolutely no coverage, Patrick, outside of on my channel, was the number of people now in Britain who, when asked their opinion on Brexit, now support rejoining the EU, support EU membership, has fallen to a record low 31%. I mean, that didn't take very long, did it? Considering we've only just left the transition period and taken proper Brexit freedom. And in fact, there were samples in this poll of 700 Leave voters and 700 Remain voters each. Only 59% of Remain voters now think we should rejoin the EU, and just 3% of Leave voters want to rejoin. 60% now support being outside of the EU, basically double the 31% that think we should rejoin the EU. Patrick, it's remarkable to see already just that shift from 2016. The simple fact is, whether people like it or not, far more Brits now support being outside of the EU than did at the time of the 2016 referendum.
Absolutely, and congratulations, Michael, for taking the trouble to comb through the detailed findings of that opinion survey, which, sometimes the papers that commission these surveys ignore the findings that they don't like. But that's right, the support for rejoining the European Union after the events of the last few months is dropping through the floor. And yet we talked the other day about the Labour Party. Almost 60% of the members want to start openly campaigning to rejoin now. And I would say it's a similar percentage among MPs at least would want to rejoin. So Britain is a leave country, proud to be outside the EU and independent again, but the Labour Party is a rejoin party. And again, that's one of the basic facts of life of British politics. And it matters a heck of a lot more than a pair of curtains in the Downing Street flat.
Absolutely. Look, guys, you can rely on us on this channel, certainly, to keep talking about issues outside of the bubble. As I said, there's a huge set of elections in May. So me and Patrick are going to stay on top of all the fallout from that. So make sure you hit subscribe and the bell on. Patrick, we'll do this again soon.
Yeah, talk soon, Michael.